The cameras flash, the headlines roll, and in the middle of it all, Donald Trump, with his signature scowl, delivers a line that chills the room. She belongs in jail. He's not talking about some nameless critic or political rival from the past. This time, his target is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a woman who has already made waves by standing tall against corruption, lies, and intimidation. For Trump, this was supposed to be the knockout punch, the ultimate silencing tactic. A demand so outrageous, so aggressive that it would leave his opponent cornered, scrambling, and afraid. But as those words echoed across TV screens and social media feeds, something else began to happen. Viewers didn't see fear in Crockett's eyes. They didn't see hesitation in her voice. Instead, what came next was a stare, steady, unshaken, almost daring. In that single moment, the stage was set for one of the most unforgettable confrontations in modern political history. And the truth: Trump had no idea he had just walked straight into a trap of his own making, because what Jasmine Crockett was about to do next would leave even him in stunned silence. For years, Donald Trump has built his empire not just on wealth and celebrity, but on intimidation. From courtroom battles to Twitter tirades, his strategy has been consistent. Overwhelm your opponent, drown them in noise, and scare them into silence. For many, it worked. Critics backed down. Allies stayed quiet. The weight of his presence was often enough to end the fight before it began. But Jasmine Crockett was different. From the very beginning, she carried herself with a calm defiance that seemed almost uncheckable. Her rise in politics was never about playing it safe or winning favors. It was about truth, accountability, and a belief that the law should never bend to power. That belief, however, came at a cost. Speaking out against Trump meant opening herself up to the kind of attacks that could ruin careers, reputations, even lives. Trump knew this. He counted on it. And that's why he thought the threat of jailing her would be the final word. But here's the twist. Trump wasn't just targeting Crockett. He was making a statement to every critic, every dissenter, every voice who dared question him. If he could silence her, he could silence anyone, and that's exactly why this moment mattered so much. This wasn't just about one man and one congresswoman. This was about the future of free speech, the boundaries of power, and whether democracy itself could withstand the weight of intimidation. Crockett knew the stakes. The cameras were rolling, the microphones live, the entire country watching. One wrong step, one shaky word, and Trump's narrative would dominate the headlines. But instead of shrinking, she leaned forward. Instead of faltering, she steadied her voice. And in that instant, the story began to shift, because what happened next wasn't just a response. It was a counterstrike that would turn Trump's words into his own undoing. To understand why Trump's attack carried such weight, you have to understand his playbook. For decades, Trump has thrived on spectacle. His enemies weren't just opponents, they were characters in a drama where he always demanded the starring role. If someone crossed him, the response was swift and brutal. Smear campaigns, late-night rants, or endless lawsuits designed to drain energy and resources. He didn't need to win every fight. He just needed to make it painful enough that people thought twice before challenging him again. That's how he built his image, larger than life, untouchable, a man who could bend rules and still walk away smiling. But behind the glittering gold facades of Trump Tower and the roar of rally crowds lay a pattern. The bullying, the intimidation, the constant threats, they weren't signs of strength. They were signs of fear. Fear that the image could crack. Fear that someone might expose the truth behind the bravado. And when Trump pointed his finger at Jasmine Crockett, and declared she. Belonged in jail, he wasn't just flexing his power. He was falling back on the same old trick he had used 1,000 times before. Only this time, his target wasn't someone willing to fold under pressure. This time, he had chosen someone who had spent her entire life preparing for moments exactly like this. Jasmine Crockett's story didn't begin under the blinding lights of Washington. It began with grit, perseverance, and a refusal to accept the idea that power belongs only to the privileged few. Raised in a world where struggle was familiar, she learned early that silence was never protection, it was surrender, before stepping into politics. Crockett built her reputation as a lawyer who fought for the voiceless. She wasn't the type to chase easy wins or headline cases. She stood beside those who had no one else. Every courtroom battle, every late-night preparation, every uphill fight against the odds taught her one lesson. The law should be a shield, not a weapon. That perspective followed her into Congress. While others polished their public image or softened their words to avoid backlash, Crockett refused to play that game. Her voice carried the weight of lived experience. Her arguments were sharpened by years of standing in rooms where no one expected her to win, yet she did, again and again. So when Trump tried to drag her into his favorite arena of intimidation, Crockett wasn't intimidated. She had faced louder voices, stronger odds, and tougher battles. Her calm wasn't weakness. It was the confidence of someone who had been underestimated her entire life, and had turned that underestimation into victory. Now, with the world watching, she was about to prove it once again. The room grew tense as Trump's accusations echoed. His voice rose louder, more forceful, each word sharpened like a blade. He leaned forward, gesturing wildly, determined to dominate the space as he always had. The cameras captured every sneer, every jab. To Trump, this was his comfort zone: chaos, noise, and intimidation. But Crockett didn't flinch. Her hands remained still, her eyes locked on him with a calm that almost unnerved the audience. The contrast was striking, one man unraveling in anger, one woman holding steady like stone. Every time Trump pushed, Crockett answered with silence, not weakness, but a silence that built suspense. A silence that let his bluster echo back on itself. Viewers watching at home began to sense it too. Trump wasn't in control of this moment. He was exposing himself, and then came the turning point. Crockett leaned into the microphone, her voice measured, clear, and deliberate. "Mr. Trump," she began, "you can shout as much as you like, but shouting doesn't change the truth." The room fell quiet. The build-up was complete. What happened next would become the moment. Replayed around the world, with the calm precision of someone who had been waiting for this very moment, Crockett launched into her response. She didn't match Trump's volume. She didn't meet anger with anger. Instead, she wielded the sharpest weapon of all, the truth, delivered with surgical precision. "You claim I should be jailed," she said, her tone steady. "But let's be clear, the only person in this room facing indictments, investigations, and a record of corruption is you?" Gasps rippled through the chamber. Trump's expression flickered, a crack in the mask of confidence. For the first time, he wasn't dictating the narrative, he was reacting to it. Crockett pressed on, her words cutting deeper. She reminded the room of the Constitution, the foundation Trump so often ignored when it didn't suit him. She laid out the principle that in America no leader is above the law. Not even a former president. Not even him. Every pause she took was deliberate. The silence after each line felt heavier than Trump's shouting ever could. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras zoomed closer, and the audience leaned in as if afraid to miss a single word, and then the finishing blow. You think threats will silence me? Mr. Trump, I've faced worse than you. I've stood in courtrooms where the odds were stacked higher and the voices louder, and every single time the truth won. So, if you want to put me in jail for telling the truth, you'd better build a lot more cells because millions of Americans are ready to stand with me. The chamber erupted. Some gasped, others applauded, but one thing was undeniable. Trump's strategy had collapsed before the world's eyes. He had set the stage for humiliation, and Jasmine Crockett had turned it into her triumph. Trump leaned back, visibly rattled, his usual swagger slipping into silence. The man who once thrived on intimidation now sat deflated, staring at the woman who had just dismantled his attack in less than 5 minutes. The clip was already making its way across social media, destined to become a viral moment replayed in countless headlines and reaction videos. And for Trump, it wasn't just a defeat. It was the beginning of a reckoning he never saw coming. The moment Crockett finished, the reaction was instant. Clips of her words hit social media within minutes. Twitter lit up with hashtags. Hashtag Crockett mic drop, hashtag truth over Trump, hashtag stand with Jasmine. The video was shared millions of times before Trump had even left the building. Memes flooded in. One showed Trump deflating like a balloon as Crockett stood tall. Another replayed her line about building more cells with thunderous applause layered over it. TikTok users stitched her speech with reactions of shock, laughter, and pure admiration. Cable news scrambled to cover the exchange. Commentators across the spectrum admitted the same thing. Trump had walked into the fight thinking he could dominate, but Crockett had flipped the script. Even critics who had underestimated her before now spoke of her as one of the sharpest and most fearless voices in Congress. For Trump, the humiliation was impossible to ignore. Instead of silencing Crockett, he had amplified her voice to the nation. And for millions watching, it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a turning point, proof that even the loudest bully can be silenced by the truth when the noise faded and the headlines slowed. What lingered was not Trump's anger, but Crockett's resolve. She had turned a threat meant to crush her into a moment that inspired countless others. Standing before reporters afterward, Crockett reframed the entire confrontation in words that resonated far beyond politics. "This isn't about me," she said. "This is about a simple principle. No one is above the law, and no one can take away your voice. If we allow intimidation to dictate truth, then we lose the very heart of democracy." Her message struck a chord. People who had long felt powerless found themselves energized. Teachers quoted her words in classrooms. Parents shared them with their kids. Activists carried them into rallies. Crockett's defiance became more than a viral clip. It became a symbol of courage. The moral was clear. Dignity, truth, and resilience carry more weight than arrogance and threats. Crockett's victory wasn't just about winning an argument. It was about reminding America of its core values, and in that reminder lay the inspiration that millions carried with them long after the cameras turned off. Sometimes the strongest act of resistance is simply refusing to be silenced. Trump's attempt to jail Jasmine Crockett was supposed to be a display of dominance. Instead, it became the very stage where his intimidation tactics crumbled. What he intended as a threat turned into a spotlight for Crockett's courage, resilience, and unshakable commitment to the truth. And the irony? By trying to silence her, Trump made sure her voice reached more people than ever before. The clip lives on not just as a viral moment, but as a reminder that when ordinary people refuse to bow to power, extraordinary things happen. If this story moved you, if it made You feel that spark of courage we all need in times like these? Then don't let it end here. Share it, talk about it. Let Crockett's words echo beyond this screen and into every corner where truth needs to be heard. And if you want to see more stories like this, where dignity triumphs over arrogance and where everyday people stand tall against impossible odds, subscribe to this channel. Join a community that believes in justice, in courage, and in never letting the truth be silenced, because the fight isn't over. But together we can make sure the right voices are always heard.